All right, guys, we are here today talking about some shoes for Hyrox. I have with me the Endorphin Speed 3. I like these shoes a lot. I know the Saucony was a very popular brand for Hyrox, and there's definitely a good reason for that because these shoes are awesome. You can see they have quite a pretty big stack here, very cushiony. It feels like styrofoam, but it's not cheap like styrofoam. And they do have a carbon fiber plate in them, but it's not like as extreme as some of these other shoes that cost an enormous amount of money and don't last very many miles. So these will last a little bit longer. They won't cost as much, but the top is super light. Like, this material is extremely light and flexible, very airy. You probably can't see it through the video, but there's little holes, so it's very breathable. And then again, also this is very cushiony. So I used to, before this, I had a pair of Brooks. They're Ghost shoes. I like those a lot. They're not as flexible, so I didn't like them as much for Hyrox, but they definitely had a lot of cushion. So I ended up getting these because I heard a lot of good reviews about them for Hyrox. We did our survey, and the Saucony, which ones?
So the Endorphin Pros were the top, or the second most used shoe on the survey for Hyrox.
Yeah, so I had heard a lot about the Sauconys and definitely wanted to try them, and I'm glad I got these because they're pretty awesome. I've run a good amount in them on the road, also on the treadmill, and they're holding up very well, and they've got a lot of support too. Probably not like my favorite thing for wall balls and stuff because they have a pretty high stack, and so you're kind of a little wobbly, but I mean, that's how a lot of these shoes are for Hyrox. Like, yep. You just kind of can't have it all, right? If you have something that's a little bit more flat, you're probably not going to be able to run as fast. But at the end of the day, the running is where you're going to make up the most time. If you're a little bit slow on your wall balls, but you're way faster on your runs, you're going to have a better time overall. There's more running. And you know, maybe the lunges, you might not be as stable there. But again, overall, these are definitely worth it. I would definitely recommend these. Once they're worn out, I might try a different shoe just to try something else, but it wouldn't be because I'm unhappy with these.
So I had a pair of Saucony. They were good. They weren't the Endorphins. I actually just recently threw them out because they were well overused, but the tread on the bottom tore off on the sled push at Hyrox.
Here's the tread on these, by the way.
Yeah, so I had my shoes had thicker strips than these, but a little similar to the same bottom as this. But those like strips tore while I was pushing the sled. So I don't know if it was just that particular shoe that I had that like they weren't glued or attached properly or whatever, or if I had used them a little too much already, but they were only like 100 or 200 miles in at that point. I don't know what happened with them. I got the same series shoe, but a slightly older model, just partly because of the deal that I got on them. So we'll see if that happens again. I wouldn't imagine it will, but we'll find out. A lot of people in the survey that we did were really high on Puma shoes, which it seems like they have some good shoes for Hyrox. I've never personally worn any Puma shoes, so I don't know about that, but they're doing really well in Hyrox.
That might be the next one I try. I'm curious if they are worth the buzz because Puma is a huge sponsor for Hyrox, yep. So of course they're going to be pushing that, but at the same time, a lot of the top athletes are wearing them and having a lot of success with them and have said very positive things, even if they're not sponsored. So I think it would be worth a try to check them out.
Yeah. Brooks also did pretty well in the survey last year and this year. They weren't great, but you know, better than most brands that were on there. Generally speaking, I would say if you're better off, like Luke said, getting a running shoe for Hyrox than you are anything specialized for like any type of weight training or anything like that, because you're running a significant amount and your time in stations isn't that much. And while it's nicer to do wall balls with a flatter shoe or something without such a high stack height, that's the minority of the time. You're running most of the time. These shoes are fine for sled pushes and pulls, for skiing, rowing, for almost all of the zones. There's one or two where it's not as good. But yeah, definitely find a shoe that's comfortable for you, that you can afford, because shoes are getting very, very pricey, especially for ones with carbon fiber plates or just very popular models right now. and make sure that you train in it so that when you race, you know exactly what you're dealing with. There were several people on the survey who listed both the shoe that they race in and the shoe that they train in, and they were different models. It was the same brand for everyone who did that, but different models. And I would ask them why.
Yeah, that's a little weird. Unless you just don't have certain equipment available where you don't want to use this shoe for that. Like if you're running on, I don't know, rough terrain or something like that or whatever. That's the only thing I could think of. But for the most part, yeah, you want to use the same shoe for training that you do for racing because then you're prepared in that way.
It could be that they bought a cheaper shoe that's similar and wanted to train in that, so they weren't wearing out their like $200 really nice pair with a super good plate in it or something like that. But it really is better to train and race in the same shoe because you know exactly what you're doing all the time. You know exactly how it feels in each station and zone. So I'd highly encourage you to get a shoe that you can train and race in. You'll be better off for it overall.
Awesome. Well, yeah, if you haven't read the article yet, check it out. Got a lot of good information in there, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.